Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it. And thank you, everybody. I know it's a little past 5 o'clock in Gainesville. I'm actually in Houston, Texas. So we're an hour behind, but as the expression goes, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. But as Ryan said, I work for a company called Mercer, and Mercer is a human resource consulting firm. So what I do is, as Ryan alluded to, work with employers to figure out, as their businesses change, what they need to do in order to attract and retain employees to meet the business needs. So Ryan, if you could go to the next slide. I just wanted to show you briefly how we're going to spend our time together today. So I wanted to start out with the biggest picture of all and talk to you about what we call mega trends, and I'll explain that in a minute. And then really the most important thing I want to leave you with are the skills that we're hearing from employers that they think they need over the next 5 years. And I think you'll find that hopefully not only interesting, but helpful as you formulate the remaining years that you have at Florida. Then I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about artificial intelligence. And in particular, as you go into the spot where you're getting ready to be interviewed or be screened for a job or screen a company, then how artificial intelligence is likely to impact you. I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge and then talk about what the global pandemic is doing, not only to employers, but to employees and prospective employees, such as all of you. Then I don't want to make this one way at all. And so we're going to have a breakout discussion, and it'll be led by 3 of your peers who you'll either meet in the sense of them being the discussion leaders. And we'll meet in a breakout way for about 20 minutes, and then, for about 15 minutes, and then a report out for about 5 minutes. And last but not least, want to talk a little bit about what helps people to thrive worldwide, and you'll get to see some differences because the world is increasingly looking at things differently across different countries and geographies. And many of you may be interested, if you're once again able to work abroad or travel, to understand what motivates people differently. And then I wanted to leave about 10 minutes for questions and answers. And then along the way here, we'll actually do a word cloud, and so you'll get to interact during the front part of the presentation as well. But Ryan, if you could go to the next slide, I wanted to spend a minute talking about megatrends. So what megatrends are, they are overriding trends that are disrupting industries, institutions, and organizations around the world. And really everything that we're going to talk about is being influenced by these 4 items that you see on the screen in front of you. So we're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about probably the one that's the most obvious to you, and that's the acceleration of digital and digital living. So that's getting at robotics, getting at artificial intelligence, machine learning, and everything that touches that. And we'll spend some time on that, but it's really causing companies to try to transform as fast as they possibly can. So we'll talk about that. What we're finding is organizations, regardless of industry or geography, are redoing their business models. And if I was talking to you 6 months or more ago, I would have said this is something you need to think about for 3 years from now. Most organizations, because of COVID, are trying to do this as soon as next year. So we'll talk a little bit about that and the implications to what does it mean if you're going to be an employee at one of these companies. The third megatrend is the growing health and wealth disparity. So there's a term you may want to, Google or look at afterward. It's called social determinants of health. So basically, the concept of what I'm talking about with this mega trend is that 80%, 80, of an individual's health is determined outside of the healthcare system. So it has to do with things such as hunger, poverty, living conditions in general. And we're seeing more and more sort of a great divide and getting wider and wider on the health and wealth side. So that's, really starting to influence how companies are trying to formulate their strategies and, again, attract and retain their employees. And then last but not least, and this seems particularly important to individuals in Generation Z, and that is the folks that are listening to me talk right now. So it's you guys. And what at least we're hearing, and I'd be interested if during the Q&A you feel differently, what we're hearing from others is that it's very, very important, not only for how much you're going to get paid, but also what is your company that you're going to work for doing to be socially responsible, worried about diversity, equity, inclusion, worried about being a responsible member of the community. So what we're finding is that's almost as important, though not quite, but almost as important as how much you might get paid as to the type of company you're going to work for and the experience you're going to have working there. So those four mega trends really override and look over everything else we're going to talk about that's going on out there. So Ryan, I think we're ready for the next slide. Okay, so what I wanted to talk about is the skills race, as we call it. And Ryan, if you could go ahead and do one click for me. So this is a quote. I wanted to, and I'll give you a little context for it. The world is facing a reskilling emergency. More than 1 billion jobs, almost 1/3 of all the jobs around the world, are likely to be transformed by technology in the next decade. So what we're finding, and what this is a picture of, I think all of us are familiar with Google, and there's a part of Google called Google Health. At the end of 2019, Google Health announced that their artificial intelligence system was just as good, if not better, than human radiologists at detecting breast cancer. So the implication of that is just an illustration of how artificial intelligence is now even starting to be more effective and possibly replace radiologists, those who help diagnose and detect cancer, for example. So what we're finding is increasingly this is happening, and those who are able to figure out the skill sets that they need to partner with technology can avoid being replaced by technology. So that's the takeaway from this slide as to why we're in a skills race. It's a skill to get you employed and to help you stay employed. And to enable that, you want to effectively partner with technology. Next slide. Okay. So wanted to, and we're not going to do this live, but we'll give you a chance to do something live in a minute. Look at this question here. What percentage of the workforce do executives believe can adapt to the new world of work? So as you think about going into the workforce, you'll be able to upfront, hopefully with a little help today, be able to adapt your skills and come into the workforce a little more seamlessly. But Brian, if you would populate the next part of the slide here. So if 40% is the percentage that executives believe can adapt to the new world of work. And one more click. Uh, 84%, so more than twice the number of employees say that they're ready to reskill. So you can see there's a wide gap here of those who executives believe can reskill and employees who want to reskill. So as you enter the workforce, I think the message here is we want to have you go in knowing those skills, and while you're at UF, be able to begin to acquire them. And so when you go for that job interview, you're ready with that set of skills that executives and the employer thinks you need. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this will be the word cloud exercise. So Ryan, I may, if it's okay with you, I'll let you give the instructions here in a minute, but what we want you to answer using a word or at the most 2 words. What are the skills needed to succeed in the workforce of the 2020s? So I think you're probably all familiar with word cloud, but Ryan, maybe you could give the instructions here.
Yeah, folks, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to put a new thing up on the screen here. And so we're going to be able to live populate our word cloud to answer Philip's question here. So if you go to Minty.com, either on your phones or current device, pop in this code, it's going to give you the opportunity to put in 2 skills. And we can all do that. As we pop those in, we will see where we all stand as a group. We'll go to the website, pop in that code, and then it will give you 2 options to put in 2 skills that you think might be the most needed to succeed in the workforce in 2020. So let's see. Oh, here we already go. Oh, wow.
Okay, and and I think it's continuing to populate. This is a group that I think is recognizing what's really going to be important here, and that is communication. And we'll talk about the different forms of communication. Certainly, working remotely should get a lot of votes, and if we've had to do nothing else in 2020, it's be adaptable. So that is certainly getting more and more important. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about technology and technological literacy. It's funny, I'm not sure how many folks populated interpersonal skills or humor, but last week I had dinner with a client, and I said I was going to be doing this presentation tonight, and how would they answer this question? And they said, I want the employees that want to work at this company to be able to look me in the eye and communicate with me. That I find too many people want to hide behind email or texting, and I want to be able to look people in the eye. I want them to have a sense of humor and be able to communicate with me. Okay, we'll give it another couple of seconds, but clearly it looks like the big 3 or 4, communication, adaptability, interpersonal skills, and technological literacy seem to be the big 4. And you'll get a chance to now compare that to a global survey that Mercer did of employees around the world. And you'll get to see how they answered it along with a couple of other groups. So great, well, thank you. I appreciate y'all doing that, and we'll circle back to a lot of these. So Ryan, I think if you'll go to the next slide in the presentation. So Mercer does a study annually. It's called Global Talent Trends. And what's unique about this survey is we asked 3 groups the same exact questions around the world. The 3 groups are employees, HR, and executives. So I've quoted a couple of times from what are executives thinking. That's where that survey came from. Now, what this is showing, and there'll be a build here, this is probably the most important subset of information we're going to talk about today. And that is the skills that employees think they need, according to their read of the marketplace, and what HR, who does the hiring for organizations, say they need, both today, which is the first column of information, and then in 2025. So as you look at this, and there'll be more time for discussion on this in the breakouts, what you should sort of notice if you look at the 2025 column, for example, you don't see the probably majority of the information that you're learning in your major today, the technical skills. So I think employers are thinking of that more as a given, and that people are going to come into the workplace or are already in the workplace with technical skills. But what's going to be important, and you see some of the information that was in the word cloud a minute or two ago showing up, such as interpersonal skills. But you see the word digital show up a couple of times. And probably what you should also look at as you look at these is the difference between what employees say and what HR says. Because as you look at the number one item that HR, which is doing the hiring, is saying versus the complete list of 5 for employees, you don't see a match there. So agile transformation doesn't show up on the employees list. Data visualization doesn't show up. So the message here, there's a little bit of a disconnect between what employees think they need and what HR is going to hire for. So whether you take a screenshot of this or just write it down, I would take a look at this entire list, but really focus on HR because they're working with the business people to decide what they need. If you could do one click, Ryan, that'd be great. Okay, there's an enormous amount of money being spent trying to reskill the current workforce. And you can see we highlighted here 2 countries, the United States, which is down in the bottom left. It's $1,200 per employee that's being budgeted for that. And then in China, which is on the far right in blue, they're spending $2,000, so more than any other country in reskilling their workforce. So you can just do pick any number in the millions and do the math on per employee at 1,200 or 2,000 or anywhere in between. You can see there's an enormous amount of money being spent trying to reskill the workforce to get this set of skills needed in 2025. Next click, Ryan. So what should be very, I think, comforting, positive for each of you is most employers believe that they're going to have to hire from outside the company. So 2/3 of them are talking about hiring from outside to get this set of skills. So in a sense, better news for prospective employees than for current employees. Secondments mean that they essentially borrow the talent from a second company. And then you can see that comes in second. And then a distant third is peer-to-peer learning networks. So, employees training each other in the skills that they need. And then last click, Ryan, I'm sorry. Okay, so HR's barriers to reskilling, and this is again, I think, in a sense, a positive for each of you. They don't necessarily believe that they can keep the talents that they have once they reskill people. And I think there's 2 things to pick up from this. Most employers would say that their highest turnover is at the 5-year mark. And they would also then quickly tell you they spend the most money training people and, in this case, reskilling them in those first 5 years. So there's an increasing concern on the part of employers that, or questioning whether they should spend that money on reskilling for the next employer. And so therefore they'd rather hire from outside and, let somebody else train them. Hopefully, the folks on the phone, each of you can pick up those skills before you even enter the workforce. So it's again, I think a positive message for folks that are in school and have a chance to, gather that skill set, before they graduate. Okay, next slide. Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about reskilling. We're not going to spend too much time on this slide, but I wanted to share a little bit in talking about what we call hard and soft skills. So I think this may be a term you're familiar with, but hard skills are more of the technical skills that people have, and then soft skills are the ones that are increasingly more and more important, as you've seen in the information you put on the slide before, and then the information I shared from the survey. So soft skills are communications, interpersonal skills, etc. So this is what employees say the top barriers are to reskilling. The reason I left this slide in here, I went back to my own early years after I graduated, and what I found was once I graduated, my ability to learn new things significantly decreased because either I was working or had a family, ultimately kids, and you have your best moment to really learn and upskill now, and that's why I just would encourage you to take that right-hand column from before and really, spend some time figuring out how am I going to acquire those skills. So when I graduate, I'm extremely marketable, and I don't have to spend time while I'm working trying to do that. Okay, if you do one click here, right? Okay, so employers are trying everything they can, and the donut is not the literal illustration of that, but I'm just sort of giving the illustration of what employers are trying to do to incentivize their workforce. And it's really a struggle to get them to continue to do that, as I'm saying, but they're trying everything they can, from free time to sending people when they can offsite, or to webinars, things like that. Okay, next click for me. Those most ready to reskill describe their work culture as having, and this is where employees are running into barriers, so just a quick item here. Typically, you want to, when you're interviewing, look for employers that will let you talk to the person you'll report to. The primary reason that employees stay or leave an organization is not how much they get paid. It's their experience with their immediate supervisor. So managers need to have their back and have a climate of trust. So while we may talk about it in this context of reskilling, it's very important to try to get a chance to, be interviewed by, or and perhaps interview the person you might be reporting to. Okay, and then last click here. And then what employers are trying to do is rethink how they're going to pay you. And what have historically paid for is simply a degree. But now they're unbundling that degree and they are paying for skills. So I think the message here is you certainly still need your degree and you need those technical skills, but that'll get you in the door and get you the interview. It's these other skills we've been talking about that'll keep you in the door and help you progress more quickly in your career. Okay, next slide. Okay, just a few minutes on artificial intelligence here. And I don't know how many of you have started to interview yet or experienced any of the new wave, but we're not going to go over most of this, but I wanted to point out one or two things here. And Ryan, why don't you go ahead and do one more click for me, and we'll handle a lot of this together. So again, this is information on the right-hand side about artificial intelligence and automation and possibly replacing jobs. But what I wanted to point out holistically here is that as you go to interview, increasingly you'll get a chance to not only screen employers, but have a chance to do what I think a lot of you enjoy, which is play games. So a lot of employers are using games and algorithms and artificial intelligence to figure out of the 100 people that put in an application to work for them, who are the 5 out of the 100 that they should actually interview. So to give you a quick example here, a client of mine has created a game where they, and this happens to be a client that operates oil rigs. So the game is they put you in the pilot's seat of a helicopter, virtually of course, and they fly you out to the oil rig. And what they do is they then have you decide, sort of a visit around the oil rig, what you would do and not do under certain circumstances. And they test your not only technical skills, but your ability to react under pressure, ability to communicate with those who are going to report to you on that oil rig. And from that game, they can tell who most fits their profile and who they want to interview out of those 100 people. They narrow it down to 5. So just a quick example of how artificial intelligence will play into something you're likely to do. Okay, next slide. I'm sorry, the next click. What you'll find here, and this sort of on the bottom right gets at who's most confident about artificial intelligence in the workplace. And as you can see, it's if you talk about in the C-suite, so what does the head of the company think? Most of them are very confident about artificial intelligence in the workplace. That's not necessarily a good news item, and most employees aren't as confident about artificial intelligence in the workplace. So what we're finding is, in general, and you may come into this experience, that executives think more highly and positively about artificial intelligence than their employees do. So I think this is a chance that we have to influence the use of artificial intelligence as you come into the workplace and get to adapt your skills to match. Okay, I think we're ready for the next slide, and then we're gonna go quickly through this. I just want to give one more example, and then I think we'll be doing a quick transition over to the breakout groups in just a minute. So I want to talk about the talent assessments that we're talking about and the power of prediction. So 72% of employees have gone through some type of talent assessment. So more and more, this is going to be not only game playing, but other types. And Ryan, if you would do one click for me. These are the types of assessments that are being used that you'll experience in the workplace or as you go to interview. So almost everybody, and you can see most of these are in the 90s. So 98% of technical skills are assessed now with technology, and you can see working your way down. You'll be doing that role playing, as I mentioned, both in the job interview and then in assessment centers. And they're also testing for cultural fit. They're assessing social media content. So I'm sure have heard that message, to be careful with social media. So just wanted you to be aware of everything that's going on in the artificial intelligence and automation area in this way. And then last click will take us to the right-hand side. So what are the challenges? 49% say we have too many candidates. So that's those 100 people that put in an application. And it's difficult to screen, and that's why you're seeing more using the technology to screen down. However, and this is what employers are working on, 57% of employees are not finding that experience to be positive. Okay, want to spend just a minute or two on coronavirus, because I do think it's obviously affected a lot of what we're talking about. So if you can go to the next slide. I alluded to this before, so I won't spend too much time on it. But the future of work is what everybody in the employer industry is referring to these days as the next wave of business transformation. As I mentioned, and just the highlight here is it's likely the future is 2021 as opposed to 2023 to 2025. So it's all happening quickly, and you're getting to see, those slide, or the slide that showed you 2025 is probably more like 2021, 2022, when those skills will become more and more important. Next slide, Lynn. So the implications here, if you could do 2 more clicks, 1 more, I'm sorry. Yeah, I wanted to point out a couple of things here. I've talked a little bit about health and wellness. The flexibility of work, most employers, as you look at the next 3, platform economy and automation, collectively, what the coronavirus has demonstrated to employers is remote working and working flexibly, whether it's at home, in the office, or a combination of both, is basically going to be what we are calling in the industry a new normal. So we don't think we're going back, and we think, I've mentioned acceleration a couple of times, that's happening. So before we transition over to the breakouts, one more slide. I just want to motivate you going into the breakouts. A future unwritten is a future of opportunity. So seize that opportunity. The punchline here is we're entering really an unknown area, and I think that can either be a problem for you or an opportunity. And I hope you'll, based on what we've talked about and what you're going to talk about now in the breakout, seize that opportunity. So if you could transition over to this next slide, and then we'll go into breakouts. So what we'd like you to discuss for the next 15 minutes is, based on what you've heard, either from me today or otherwise, in whatever form you might have heard it, what are 2 specific things you can do to be more attractive to a prospective employer and progress more quickly in your career? And think of these as things you can do now while you're in school, as opposed to, after you get out. So Ryan, is it okay to let you maybe give the instructions for the breakout?
Absolutely. Thanks, Philip. I think, Philip's given us plenty to chew on, so let's chew on it. This is what learning is. Let's actually dive in. So I'm going to go ahead and split us up into just 2 separate rooms so that we can speak a little bit more informally and openly about what we're thinking. So in just the next couple of moments, you're going to get a prompt to join a new Zoom. So go ahead and follow that prompt, and then after we've chatted, we'll all come back together. All right, those invitations will be incoming. Wonderful. Wonderful. Hey, Marlena.
There we go.
Hi, Anna. How are you? I'm doing good. By the way, I just got your invite for the Canva, so thank you.
No problem. All right. Hi, everyone. Hi, Marlena.
Hi.
Perfect. So I guess going off of the question, based on what we've learned either today or otherwise, right? What are some skills that could make ourselves more marketable, right? Is what I think I got. I should have taken a screenshot. I tried to write it down.
I actually have the screenshot right here. Hunter.
Perfect, if you want to read it.
Um, oh, did you say you wanted me to read it? Sorry, my Zoom is bad.
You're good.
So it was based on what you've heard, either today or otherwise. What are 2 specific things you can do to be more attractive to a prospective employer and progress more quickly in your career?
Perfect. If you want to take it away. Or not. Anybody want to start us off? Or
I would say work on communication and become more aware of AI. I didn't even conceptualize that being an important thing. I'd like to be more exposed to it. Yeah.
I totally didn't know that, like the whole game scenario. I think that's interesting, but I was not aware that like an oil rig company was using it. You know, like I would expect something that works in AI, but that's interesting to see how the future could look like, right?
And I would recommend when we come back together, because my question, if I were you, would be, so how do I do that? Because generating communication skills, while not easy, at least for someone like me, feels more accessible than generating AI skills or developing that kind of literacy. So I'm curious if anyone has ideas, but if not, this is a question that we should pose to Philip.
Yeah. Anybody have a skill, Carson?
Oh, I was just going to say that I thought it was really interesting that Mr. Tenenbaum was saying that being in college is such a great time to take advantage of the time and like that we have and all the resources we have to learn. And I was wondering, kind of speaking of the AI, I know we, especially in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, might have a little bit more elective room. So maybe trying to fit in more like maybe data or quantitative classes while we're all still but students, and we have this time to do it.
Good point, Carson. And
yeah, I think.
Go ahead on.
No. My Zoom lagged. I didn't hear you.
That's true. And one thing that, you know, I think about still a lot, and I think is so important for everyone, is how can we sort of pull the rope all the way back to today or this week, right, in a way that's meaningful for our lives? Because, you know, getting better at AI is this big amorphous thing, but perhaps looking at upper level electives that can expose us to that, but also for the purposes of you all, satisfy a degree requirement, right? There's a level of efficiency you can think about here. It's a good idea.
Yeah. Building off that point too, I think for me, even just with college, like as I'm taking like more electives of liberal arts, like finding what we're good at, like especially during this time, like what clicks for us and what seems to be like our strong suit. Like I'm really learning a little bit more about myself and like what I'm good at through like college and some electives we're taking.
I think that's exactly what, you know, we're meant to get out of it, right? As much as I'm not a huge fan of like the more mathematical and like statistics and coding classes that have to do with, I know for sure that I've picked up important skills from those classes that I could apply and make it more holistic, right? I'll share a skill, I guess. I think as Marlena, you mentioned communication for sure. I think that's something that I also want to continue improving, not just like oral, but written. I've heard from so many people that, you know, written communication is so important. And I just think that comes along with like practice, right? And I think whether it be papers or briefs or emails, whatever it is, I think that I can definitely continue improving, whether it be like style, you know, condensing information, timeliness of sending emails back. So I think for sure, like you mentioned, Marlena, communication is something I can continue improving.
Is there anybody aware of any kind of pen pal situation? I really enjoyed that in grade school, and I think it would be helpful in college. Anybody?
That's interesting. Marlena, what was it about that you enjoyed in terms of sort of developing communication?
For me, it was just getting to know someone in a completely different area. I think it was fourth or fifth grade, and they lived in a different town, and that was such a big deal when you're a kid. I think it'd be really nourishing to me as a student to sociology, to maybe be a pen pal with someone in the medical side of things or foreign language. I think that'd be really cool to help us with communication and learn how the other side's living.
Yeah. I don't know of any programs, but I bet maybe some student organizations might have some sort of component, or maybe looking it up on Google, or if it doesn't exist, maybe you could start something like it. Right?
Yeah, right. I'll start pitching that around.
There you go.
I'll say this, Marlena, while I also am not aware of a formal program, in some ways, the sort of, adult professional version of what you're talking about is networking. When you have to create that for yourself by reaching out to people, even if the industry that they're in is not immediately relevant. Like you said, as a sociology major, to reach out to someone in the medical field and ask for an informational interview, whether that's through LinkedIn or another platform. Phil was talking about college as a time to take advantage for skill development, but it's also a great time because people want to give their time to you. You always be amazed how receptive professionals across industries will be if you just say, hey, can we talk? I'm a student, I want to learn about this thing. You'd be amazed how much people will respond.
That makes sense. Thank you.
I've noticed that, as intimidating as it can be to kind of get up the courage to reach out to someone and be like that I don't know. I've noticed that those interviews, usually people are very forthcoming and just excited to tell you about what they're doing, how they got there, or I asked about writing, and they were like, yeah, read this book, read that book, read this. And I was like, that's very cool that they were just willing to be open and to meet, whether it be virtually or in person. All right, we haven't heard from Ruben yet. Do you have any skills that?
I think just that each person is unique and they bring a variety of different strengths and weaknesses. So just presenting yourself as bringing something to the table. I think so just finding what that is for you. And yeah, I think, yeah. Yeah.
For sure. I agree.
One of the difficult things to learn regarding skill development is that you get to a point, and it's in college usually, where things stop getting better just by living. Right? It's just, up till a certain age, you get older, you get more mature, and things kind of get better via osmosis. That really halts. And even things that seem intuitive, like communication and adaptability, have to be improved systematically and intentionally, or they just won't keep getting better by living like they did before. Carson, do you have one? Did you share your skill?
I have not yet. We had communication and AI so far, and then I'm so sorry. What was yours, Ruben?
Yeah, just bringing unique stuff to the table. I didn't really have a specific skill to bring.
Let's pick it down, Ruben. What if you got what's your best skill interview question?
What's my best skill? I guess.
Answer it. So you can answer.
Yeah, my best skill. I don't know. I guess just connecting with people and just being flexible and just reaching out there, doing what I can, Yeah.
Yeah, excellent.
Oh, sorry. I think that's probably the skill I definitely need to work on, is flexibility, which is a good thing to have to work on during all this craziness with being online.
I agree. I think it's definitely a very useful skill, you know, whether it is that somebody asks you to do something last minute or your plans change last minute. I have had that happening recently in like an internship where just something happened, whether like a speaker or um, like a major, you know, event happened that totally changed the whole course of what we were planning, and just kind of like regrouping and making a new plan, right? Making a new strategy, I think, is a useful skill to have for sure.
No, and I noticed that too with my internship, like especially like having to be able to change like last minute, like sometimes I get maybe like 10 minutes notice, being able to adjust from there and just like base it off of different people's schedules. So it's definitely a good skill to have.
Absolutely. Oh, you got some good stuff to share. We're all ready to
I'd
go.
just like to make a note. Carson and Anna, y'all are already very flexible in my opinion, because when we were in London and we had to just make those adjustments, and I was like, let's go. Y'all were very flexible. So I just like to make that comment.
Brittany's point, if you're going to claim you have a skill and develop it, if someone asks about it, you also have to have a story to go with it and prove it. So thanks for bringing that up, Brittany. Let's come back together and chat with everybody. See y'all soon.
Sounds good.
Welcome back, folks. I'm sure the rest will join us soon. Welcome back, everyone. Good to see everyone.
And Ryan, you must have put everybody on mute to start.
Oh, okay. So sorry. Roll back. So I'll turn it back over to you, Phil.
No, I think we were gonna, just have a quick report out. I think we ended up with 2 groups, right, Ryan? Yeah, so I'm not sure who headed up. I know Hunter was in the group I was in. I'm not sure who led the other group.
Anna and Carson.
Okay. So why don't we just start, and maybe Anna, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, so our group, we started off talking about communication, how, we can take advantage of this time to really work on our oral and as well as our written communication. And Marlena, who's in our group, kind of even mentioned like some sort of like pen pal maybe program. And Ryan kind of came in and mentioned how we could adapt that to like some sort of networking, and how, communication ties in with networking, and how we can better those skills of just being able to get our points across, maybe condensing information, and also timeliness. I kind of mentioned that, of how that's something I can get better at in terms of responding to things sometimes. And so we talked about communication, and then we also mentioned, we were all a little bit surprised and interested in the AI that you mentioned, and how I think we're going to have some more questions about that, but that's just something that I personally didn't know about too much, and how can we, learn more. And lastly, like flexibility. And if Carson, you want to pitch in and add to it, feel free.
Definitely. I thought our group did an awesome job of coming up with lots of different ones. And we talked about ways that we might incorporate them into like our everyday lives, maybe through the pen pal or reaching out through networking, and then maybe also through upper level electives or other opportunities that we could kind of incorporate into coursework we're already going to have to be required to take.
That's great. And Hunter, I think you were in the other group.
Yes, our group actually went with more of a conversation. We went really in depth with communication and sort of the barriers that that has now, especially with COVID, with everything being behind a computer screen, what that means for showing your personality, a lot of the social cues that you'd have being in front of a person. You can't really do that as well when you're in front of a computer. So what that means with interviewing, marketing yourself, but also making sure that you're still being a person and they're seeing you instead of just a picture on a screen, right? And then we had a few people also mention leadership as something that they think is very important, leadership skills. And I think we can all relate to that. Whenever you look for like a job or an internship application, they always ask you, have you been in any clubs? Have you held any leadership positions? And kind of what that means. They want to see how you work with people, but also how you can take initiative and delegate tasks. And then we also had the conversation of, I know you mentioned the 2025 list of skills is going to be accelerated because of COVID. And that's kind of turning into the 2021, 2022, which is creeping up around the corner for a lot of us that are going to be graduating soon. And kind of what that means, because you did mention a lot of those skills are things that we might want to start working on while we're in undergrad. But they're very much separate from a lot of our majors. So what that means, where can we start learning these? How can we start incorporating this in our daily lives? Would that be through a club, in a leadership position? Would that be more so taking classes outside of your major? So what are the ways in which we can start thinking about this and setting ourselves up for success?
Yeah, and I'm curious because each of you alluded to it in your own way, and maybe Ryan, just without putting you on the spot too much, but outside of sort of normal classwork, are there vehicles at Florida for formally doing this, or does everything need to be more informal and sort of self-taught?
Both, there are avenues, so it takes a lot of initiative. So in terms of some of the technical skill building, there are things like certification programs that, for example, through Beyond 120, we promote, or even much larger and easily accessible things like LinkedIn Learning. And even companies like Salesforce have really dynamic, available curricula where you can spend, 12 hours over the course of a few weeks learning a particular software or learning a particular technical skill. So they exist, and I will send a big recap email to everyone with all these resources as well as Philip's resources. But I think you alluded to earlier, Philip, the barrier of time.
Right.
Real, though with this newfound relevance that folks may be able to make it.
Yeah, maybe just in closing, the only thing I'd say, now we can look at this other slide very quickly, but going back to what I think maybe Hunter, you said, even if you only have 6 months till you graduate, you're still in a sense ahead of where current employees are, in that you're probably, your generation has grown up with technology more than, say, the current workforce. So I think in the communication part of an interview, acknowledging, I know what you're looking for, I've started to develop that, is still ahead of where most people are, which is, remember, the CEO of the company doesn't think the current employees can, but you've got the awareness and you've started. And I think sometimes just acknowledging that helps you get the interview and the hire, as opposed to the current employees. So it's always going to be competitive, but I think knowing going in is very helpful. And let's look at the last slide real quickly, and then I know we're coming up on the top of the hour. I just wanted to share, because again, a lot of you may ultimately, if post-COVID, want to work somewhere else, and want to know, well, if I'm going to want to work in Europe, how is what they are motivated by different than if I want to work in the US? So again, you'll have a copy of these slides, and you'll see there's lots of different colors and everything. But if you look at the US, for example, you'll see that right in the middle of the page here on the right-hand side is the ability to manage my work-life balance. It's pretty important. And then you'll start to see others around what I'll call non-financial measures. You'll see in other parts of the world it's much different. So the reason I put this in is because a lot of you don't necessarily want to just have a U.S. work experience, and I wanted you to understand, what you might be walking into. Not necessarily bad, just different. Okay, I think the next slide. So, we're at the top of the hour. I'm happy to, if people have a minute, maybe answer a question or two, or, we can circle back with email, Ryan. And the only other thing I'd suggest, maybe if there's some good, material that came out of the breakouts, maybe, Brian, we could attach that and send it out.
I'll absolutely send a summary as well as these slides and other resources that are relevant to what we've talked about. But yeah, while we have them, I would encourage, I know there were some questions about, but practically, how do I gain some of these digital literacy and AI literacy skills? And if you can ask him if you're bold, or we can, of course, use the chat function as well.
I'm actively monitoring chat. Yeah, I mean, the resources are, number one, I think I say this every time I talk with the folks at UF, but set yourself up on LinkedIn if you haven't already. That's the best, for working people, it's the best networking opportunity out there. And you'll also be able to identify a lot of Gator alumni, and that always helps. I know whether I should or not, I give special credence to Gators. And I think a lot of other people do the same thing on the, that basis. Any questions though?
I have a quick question.
I'll go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. I'm going to ask, please.
So this is kind of going back to, I think, what you mentioned earlier. So it used to be people used to hire based on your degree, but now it's more so your skills. But that's not to say that your degree is not important, that your degree gets you in the door. So with that being said, maybe for a lot of us who have liberal arts degrees that are not going into one specific type of career, something that is very, you can use it for many different career paths. What's something that we should focus on when we're looking into companies, looking into, I guess, even positions? So something that matches the skills that we learned like in our degree, or just something that we might want to focus on like moral wise. So sort of that like corporate social responsibility, if it's a company that resonates with our morals and what we might want to look further into, but maybe not something that we took a lot of classes for in undergrad. So kind of what's the balance, or what should we be prioritizing or kind of looking for, I guess, if that
yeah,
makes sense.
I guess to unpack that a bit, again, what companies are increasingly looking for, as you said, is they're not doing degree-based hiring, they're doing skills-based hiring. So I think, if you sort of either, Hunter, understand the skills that they're looking for, or the skills that you have, or have what I'll call the aptitude most easily to acquire, and then doing a match on those two, I think you end up being a little ahead of the competition. So from today a little generically what the skills are, but I think if you want to work for the ABC company because they fit your moral compass and everything, then I think you want to unpack and understand the skills that they're looking for. But more and more employers are looking for employees that have the ability to learn, as opposed to coming in with those skills, because a lot of them are brand new, and there's no degree program that would give it to them anyway. So again, I think liberal arts, because of the nature of what it does, is demonstrating your aptitude to learn, and it's not the technical skills they're looking for there. So I don't know if that answered your question, but it sort of gets at your aptitude and ability to learn, and you just want to understand the skills they're looking for.
Yeah, no, that's really great. Thank you.
Okay, any other last questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Jordan.
So I was wondering, so I'm a freshman, and how does one sort of determine the right path for them? So there's all these skills that can sort of get you to a job today, but how does one determine this skill, I have this skill and I need to improve on it, and just defining your own identity while trying to fit in with the improving technology in the world?
Well, I'm trying to, it's been a long time, but I'll go back to when I was a freshman at Florida. And, what I quickly, found, just determined for myself was I enjoyed math. That's how I sort of became a math major. I ultimately became an actuary. And I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with an actuary. At first, I thought actuaries like to play with birds. And then I had aviaries or what, that. But then I quickly did the research and found out, math skills apply to that profession. But I think, life's too short to do something you don't enjoy. So I would start with what you enjoy doing. And then you probably then want to match up what are the skills that you most readily can develop based on what you enjoy. And if you get lucky, then the jobs and the needs are out there for that set of skills, and you'll have a great career and enjoy yourself. But I'd start very basic with what you grew up enjoying, and go from there, and then do the research to see if you get a good match or if you have to learn to enjoy some other stuff. So hopefully that helps a little.
Thank you.
Sure. Good luck. Anything else? Any final questions? We're down to the crucial 6 here, I think. No, we still got 13. Okay, I just can't see everybody on the screen. Okay. I can fix it. There we go. Okay, well, I just want to, again, thank you all very much for taking some time out of your day. And hopefully this has been helpful. And, Ryan, if you get any follow-up questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them. Just shoot me an email. And for those
Thank you
who
very
don't have my email address, I'm sure Ryan could get it, and you can ask me directly if you didn't want to ask today. But thank you very much.
I would take him up on that offer, folks. I will send a summary email, and please, if questions come up, and they should, I'm happy to pass them along to Philip. Thank you very much.
You are very welcome, and y'all have a great day, and go Gators.
Go Gators.
All right.
Good night, everyone.